welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 161, and we are recording on July 3rd. So for those of you who celebrate, happy 4th of July or happy Treason Day.
Today we celebrate our Independence Day.
Well, and if you're Canadian, happy Canada Day from what, yesterday or today?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yesterday.
yesterday was Canada Day. Any other days going on? I don't know. Yeah, but we're gonna hopefully get this recorded before anybody starts lighting off fireworks and my dog goes full Karen. Luna doesn't. She just gets mad at people who light off fireworks. So. So were you guys big fireworks aficionados at any point or still in your life?
I like them. I mean, they're fun. I still remember like the best experience was being in Washington D.C. for the 4th of July, the Capitol 4th fireworks show. I mean, you talk about people spending money on gunpowder, the earth shakes. It's awesome. That's so that, and then of course Disney World. You got to go to the fireworks show every night. But,
I was talking more
most of the time that's
like purchasing fireworks and lighting them off in your front lawn and stuff like that.
I like my fingers where they're at.
Dave?
We do some of that. I think that's. I got to say, I'm not enamored of the public shows that are available in New Orleans. They're always idiots firing them off in their backyards 3 days ahead of time and 3 days later, which irritates me to no end. But then, the actual shows on the day always underwhelm. It's hard to park, and you're fighting all these people, and then your view isn't so good, and then the show's done and way too quickly, and I don't like that. So it's like, okay, we'll fire off some of our own stuff.
All right, so I've got I'll tell you my 4th of July history here. First of all, growing up, one of the best friends of our family was the state fire marshal in Nebraska. And we always knew what was going to be illegal the next year based on his experience lighting fireworks for his kids. So that was kind of like, oh man, don't let this happen to Wally because those are too fun, But anyway, so in Nebraska, when I was, I suppose I started more like in the later 90s. I was married, and like I said, I was in a band, and I would rat hole my gig money so that I could, had my fireworks, fund. And then my brother-in-law, of course, like I said, everything was pretty much illegal in Nebraska. At least anything good was illegal in Nebraska. So my brother-in-law and I would, put on the Smokey and the Bandit theme and drive across the state lines to Missouri, load up on all the good stuff, bring it back. So I have a couple stories for you. First of all, there was one year we're at my in-laws, and we had the garage just like it was my brother-in-law stockpile, my stockpile, and his brother's stockpile. So I mean, it was an arsenal in this garage, and we're sitting there, just sitting there in lawn chairs, and each have a bottle of beer underneath sitting next to us, and we're lighting bottle rockets off across the street. So we're breaking two city ordinances because yes, New Orleans folks, not every place can you have, open container beverages just, wherever. So anyway, and we're lighting these things off, bottle rockets off. And one of my friends goes, uh-oh. And the other one starts moving his beer underneath his chair. And I said, what? Right as I'm lighting a bottle rocket, and my bottle rocket shoots right over the head of a motorcycle cop as he's driving by. And he just holds out his finger like Darth Vader, just, and drives on. And we're like, okay, I think it's time to go inside for a bit. So fast forward a little bit, and my wife and I were leaving school, and I'd gotten wind of who this motorcycle cop might have been. It's a smaller town, Nebraska, but anyway, and Officer Gronwaller was our school resource officer, filling in as our school resource officer. And Brittany and I were leaving school with Officer Gronwaller, and I said, I got a question. Did somebody happen to shoot a bottle rocket over your head on the 4th of July? He goes, yes, I think it did. I said, yeah, I think that was me. Well, I think it was too. I was just like, oh my God. I said, what's the statute of limitations of being a dumb A? And he's like, you're just having a good time. Anyway, so another fireworks story. Now my in-laws live outside of town and out in the country. And again, we're loaded up with all the bottle rockets and everything. And these, by the way, these bottle rockets that we would get as well, they had some that were pretty much just like artillery shells on a stick, like not just the regular old firecracker bottle rockets, which are fun. That was the one that went over the cop's head. This was, like I said, an artillery shell on a stick. And we had PVC pipe dug in the ground, and we're getting a good trajectory off. We're just sitting there lighting these things off. And I said, all right, it's time for one of the big ones. And so I put the big bottle rocket in the PVC pipe. Well, first of all, I have to tell you that across the road, about 7,500 yards away across the road, is my in-laws' neighbors, and they have a pen full of alpacas. And so, yeah, you see where this is going. So I put one of these heavy bottle rockets in the PVC pipe, and I light it. And as I light it, the tube drops a little bit, so the trajectory becomes a lot more shallow, and this thing just fires parallel across the road and lands in front of this pen of alpacas, and it blows up. It was like Fallujah, and alpacas are just going running all around, and no alpacas were hurt. And we're like, oh my God, this could have been so bad. And I hand to God this happened. One alpaca walked up the road until it got parallel with me and just stared at me. So, yeah, that was, I think, probably the last time that I did anything big with fireworks. Because then we came down here, and you can't really do anything without setting the whole city on fire. So, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's not so good.
But I love fireworks. I love lighting them off. And now I'm just kind of like, I don't really want to. And we live in a community, or we have a community right across the street from us that are a bunch of military veterans, and a lot with various medical or emotional issues, things like that. And so it's like, if you got people dealing with PTSD, the last thing you need to be doing is lighting off artillery shells, So anyway, that's my 4th of July stories. So no,
My thing is, my thing usually with both 4th of July and New Year's Eve is I'm perfectly fine with you setting off enough fireworks, punch a hole in the sky, day off. Go for it. It's the bleed through. It's the we're starting June 30th, and we will not be done till July 7th. I'm like, okay, you bought enough firepower, enough fireworks in order to take over a small country. Cool. Blow it all up on the 4th. Go for it. Go nuts. I hate the fact that it was going to be 3 days still, and people are saying, "Oh, firing off." So I'm like, okay, now you just, I guess you can't stock it, you can't put it away, but at the same time, it's like, come on, man.
I haven't heard any really around here. So let's knock on wood.
Too hot.
But
too hot.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Well, anyway, nobody came here to listen to fireworks, but yeah, that was my favorite though. And if you follow me on Facebook, you might see a memory of the aftermath of the alpacas. I'll send you guys a picture so you can see it. But yeah, it was hilarious.
I have some stories to share when I was younger and dumber, but I'll do that off air.
Okay, well, if you want to, you can. I mean, I just shared mine, so. I mean, I about took out a motorcycle cop. So, all right. Well, let's do some Star Wars trivia. This is a Star Wars podcast anyway. All right. Dave, since you were just talking, what two things, according to C-3PO's halting translation, are he and R2 bringing to Jabba? What two things, according to C-3PO's halting translation, are he and R2 bringing to Jabba?
A message and a gift.
Gift? What gift? Yep, that's correct. A message and a gift. All right. Very good. Fredo, to you. Who claims I have brought peace and security to my new empire?
Your new empire. That would be the one and only Anakin Skywalker. Although, would it be Lord Darth Vader at this point?
They
Lord
actually
Vader.
say in the card that you can have either Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
All
So-
right.
I don't know. There's probably some big nerd fight as to, who it actually is. But not here. All right. And to me, who observes that Luke Skywalker has, quote, never expressed any unhappiness with his work? That's kind of funny. Because it's kind of linked to Dave's question. Who observes that Luke Skywalker has, quote, never expressed any unhappiness with his work? That would be C-3PO. Da, 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 da. By the way, I have to also share with our listeners one of the best memes. You don't have to see the picture, but I shared it within our group, and it says Darth Vader personally goes to Tantive 4, which is covered in spaceship to oversee the operation. Darth Vader personally goes to Hoth, which is covered in snow, to oversee the operation. Darth Vader personally goes to Cloud City, which is covered in city, to oversee the operation. Darth Vader personally goes to the forest moon of Endor, which is covered in forest, to oversee the operation. Vader, she must have hidden the plans in the escape pod. Send a detachment down to retrieve them. Commander Praji, do you want me to prepare your ship so you can oversee the operation personally like you always do? Vader, of course not. That planet is covered in sand. Both Imperials and Chorus don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating. It gets everywhere. We know. I just think that was funny. So, anyway.
Because it's also true. It's the one time he doesn't literally take charge and go finish the job himself.
So tonight's episode, we're going to talk mainly about, we're actually going to go back into Marvel Land. We're going to be talking about the first two episodes of Secret Invasion. And I'll probably turn it into a little bit of a Star Wars discussion. But because I think it's kind of funny what Marvel does and how if Star Wars could implement even a slightest bit of it, and they might, in the Ahsoka stuff, then they could solve everybody's problems. And we're also going to talk about the Mandalorian Season 3 documentary that was oh so riveting. A little bit of nuance there. So anyway, Fredo, do we have any really big news this week? Not a lot, right?
Not news per se. I mean, holiday coming, strike happening. So no, but there is a big one rumor that Dave kind of brought his ears to the ground, kind of brought up, which is true. It's there's a rumor surfacing that Lucasfilm, along with Daisy Ridley, are trying to get John Boyega to return to his role as Finn for the upcoming New Jedi Order movie that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is directing. So while they made a commitment at Celebration to explore new characters, they're hoping maybe to bring it back to kind of, expand on his character, not leave him kind of where they left him off at the end of Rise of Skywalker. So for right now, rumor, he hasn't signed anything. He hasn't even committed to anything. So we'll see.
Make Finn the bad guy.
Oh, jeez.
You screwed me over type of a deal, because then you can actually don't let him like kill his parents or anything like this, but then you can give him like a total redemption arc, but anyway,
no. Okay, so we all know the reason that he's upset or was upset and talked about not coming back, and it was because of how his character was handled. And there are rumblings that he's more at peace with that now. We'll see if that's actually the case or not. But part of that was, how is his character handled? He wasn't given the opportunity to be a Jedi for, representation reasons and for probably personal reasons. He would have loved to have been a Jedi. Um, and yeah, so let's just turn him into a bad guy.
But what I'm saying is that you could actually, or make him like a disillusioned. I mean, or here's my thing. Okay, so I understand what you just said. Take out, but let's say that never happened, just for example. Okay, let's get in the DeLorean, and that never happened. If you have Rey and Finn, it becomes like it kind of seems like I don't know. There has to be, if they're just like everything's hunky dory and we're two Jedi without any sort of problem between us. Is it interesting? It's kind of like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, which The Last Jedi was on the other day, and I watched a little bit of it, and I found myself thinking again, this is the absolute right thing that they did with Luke Skywalker, because if Luke Skywalker would have come back in The Last Jedi and been like, superhero Luke, it would have not been an interesting story at all. So, given what has happened, couldn't you have Finn not necessarily evil, but kind of like an FU Jedi type of, or like, I've got my powers, you blew me off on training, could kind of parallel a little bit to what happened with Lucasfilm, and then you give him a redemptive arc and he's like ends up being the hero of the whole thing. Be interesting.
It'd be an interesting way to take his character, because on the one hand, he was never outside of Force Awakens. When he got the lightsaber, he really wasn't ever earmarked for Jedi beyond that movie. Last Jedi had him running around with Rose. Ron Skywalker made a point of pointing out he had something to tell Rey, but never came out of nothing. I guess his Jedi power is to find out which Star Destroyer has the command beacon or whatever. So there's a way you could kind of bring it along. And might make it interesting. I just wonder if he'd sign up for that, if that's what he'd be interested in after everything's going to, because it's going to take a lot of work, even if the hatches are buried. It's going to take a lot of work to convince them to replace the role.
It would have to be, here is the plan for your character. I guess my point, let's just the overall thing. I'm just saying, if I was writing, I think it would be very difficult. It'd be easy if I had one of them, if it was just Finn or just Daisy or just Poe. But when you then have the two of them, it's like, okay, what can I do interesting beyond, a love story? You know what I mean? It's like, then of course, even Luke, or, I understand that you had Padawan and Master, and so maybe that is a possibility, and that creates a little bit of that rhyming conflict between, I don't know. I just think it would be difficult to, to just write that story, because I'm not a writer. I'm, well, at least that kind of writer. But anyway.
What I would be down for would be an ideological difference of opinion. They're both fully formed, fully capable Jedi warriors who don't agree on the direction that they should be going with things, and there's a rift. And I'd be cool with that, something along those lines.
I think that'd be cool. And so let me ask you this. That creates it, even because when I said make him evil, and you looked at me like, oh God, Aaron, that's just is like the worst idea ever, which I get your point as to why. But now, so you're telling me let's have Rey, who was the first female,
Lee.
Well, and Daisy Ridley, who caught a lot of crap for the whole Mary Sue and everything like that, and then so she's disenfranchised, and and all these things. And then you have Finn, who, or I'm sorry, John Boyega, who with his issues with how his character was developed. And now you're going to say you're going to make them equal. Does that take anything away from Ray's story? If all of a sudden it's like now they're just equal, or if you say that one is lesser than the other, does that? I'm just saying this is kind of an interesting situation.
I think most people think the Rise of Skywalker was a significant misstep. So I wouldn't think anything in there is sacrosanct, and including her being a powerful descendant of Sheev. Like, okay, she's a descendant of Sheev in some way. That doesn't mean she's more powerful than anyone else, especially after, 10, 15 years of training or what have you. So, and again, like, it doesn't have to be like, I say on equal footing. That doesn't mean they're like equal, but they are contemporaries. They're people who are, they're co-workers, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
These people that work together.
Oh, but you're right. The ideological, differences. That would be a good,
Civil
conflict.
War. Like
Yeah.
Captain America, Civil War kind of a thing. Like I'd be down for something like that because at least it's a little different. I don't want to. We're gonna get an evil Padawan again. Okay.
It's Star Wars. We're going to get something again. I'm sorry. It all kinds of rhyme. Always kind of rhymes. By the way, because you said Civil War, I saw, this is how slow news is, as far as in my nerd feeds, but they listed the Hogwarts houses for each of the original Avengers. And they had Tony Stark, Iron Man, as being in Gryffindor.
No.
Yeah, totally disagree with that.
No.
Totally disagree with that. I mean, Captain America was Gryffindor.
Very
That makes
much so.
sense. Thor was, but yeah, Tony Stark, nah.
I mean, I could see Tony Stark as being Ravenclaw because of his inventiveness, but I could also see him being a Slytherin because of
Yeah.
his ego. It's like,
Anyway, sorry. The nerd things that come up, and like I brought that up to Britt in the car yesterday, and she's like, no. So anyway, I mean, I think it'd be, I would hope that they would actually bring, if they could, Oscar Isaac, because we did not get enough of the trio. But I mean, I'll take what they give us. So, yeah.
well, and I just because it'd be interesting too, because you're right. The few moments, particularly in Rise of Skywalker, where things kind of feel like Star Wars, it's when the three of them are bantering and going at one another. Because episode 7 didn't bring them together, or neither did episode 8. Episode 9 is really the one time they're all together. They actually feel like a team. So,
I
uh,
guess my thing is
yeah,
I mean, Star Wars has recently the tendency to put things and people into movies just because, not really to serve the story. If you have a story to tell that involves all three of them, awesome. If Poe doesn't need to be involved, perfect, fine. Don't just shoehorn him in,
right.
just cuz. And Star Wars tends to do that recently.
Lucasfilms tend to do that. I'll just leave it that way because I was telling Dave I went to see Indiana Jones and the
Yeah,
Dial of
we saw it
Destiny.
too.
So,
Yeah.
so you know what I'm talking about, shoehorning.
It's yeah, I told Dave on Saturday, it's for me, I want to see it again. Britt really enjoyed it. It was fun. And it was
Yeah.
fun. But I
Hmm.
want to see it again. It was, yeah. So,
Yeah, for me, I saw it as a matinee, and I think that's probably what works best. It's not one that you absolutely must, like it's not must see. Like it's not. I'm not gonna rave about it the way I will rave all day long about Across the Spider-Verse or Guardians of the Galaxy 3. but it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't, it's way better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I know, damning with faint praise. Uh, but also it's a good send off. But I know, just the one thing I was telling Dave was like, before I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's like, it's surprising how 1981, outside of a few composite shots, most of it is practical effects, stunt work. And in this one, you cannot escape CGI.
Yep. No,
Okay.
once Dave sees it, we'll talk about it.
It
So,
may not be soon.
well, I tell you what,
It's okay. We'll have topics.
let's talk about the because just was like about a week ago, the Mandalorian season 3 gallery um, episode, I suppose, dropped on Disney Plus. And I get really excited about documentaries. I love documentaries about I love to see behind the scenes stuff and hear stories about it. And here's my hot take. The first one they did for the way they did it for season 1 was awesome. Loved it. Loved the round tables. They kind of continued that for season 2 a little bit, but fewer episodes, I believe. This one didn't tell me anything I didn't know from watching the show. Not even just because I read Star Wars news and everything like that. This was just kind of eh.
I don't know.
It was
There were,
enjoyable, but it
yeah,
was it seemed like it seemed dialed in
there were a few
or
moments
phoned
that I
in.
kind of, yeah, there are a few moments kind of where the personalities of the directors and the cast kind of come through. Like, I love when Carl Weathers is talking about his episode and how he's having to bring to life the moment where we see how Grogu gets out of the Jedi Temple, the idea of bringing Kelleran back. I really like that. I like the fact that Bryce Dallas Howard is leading into sort of the silliness of her episode and having Lizzo and Jack Black, which we still remember that was a very controversial the way it was received episode. Uh, and then just kind of like giving us some of the ideas about how John and I love the fact that both John Favreau and Dave Filoni are upfront that this is just their baby. This is just them standing over everybody. It's like no, it's a team effort. It's a group effort between themselves. Rick Famuyiwa, Bryce Dallas Howard, the other directors they brought on board, and the other thing that kind of stuck with me was shoot, what's the name of the director of Minari, who directed uh, the episode, Lee Isaac Chung, who directed the episode where the doctor is on Coruscant and we're following his story. And it's like how he basically got told, hey, yes, you're making a Star Wars episode, but an episode in Star Wars, but what other movie or film, film thing do you want to lean into? And they said Hitchcock. So,
So okay, yeah, okay, and I'll let Dave talk in a second. But the problem is Fredo, and I agree with you. That was like, okay, cool, Hitchcock, awesome. But then they just let it drop like a hot rock.
mhm.
This was like a seventh grader giving a book report. It was like, then this happened, and then in this episode this happened, and then in this episode this happened, and it's like you just start talking about something interesting, and we're moving on to something else, and it's like what I would spend a little bit more time talking to me. Talk to me. Why did you choose Hitchcock? Why? What about it? I was really looking forward to like getting some sort of backstory on why the Pershing stuff was in there in the first place, or something from Dave and John about that. But it was just like we were there for about a minute and a half and then moving on. And that's it. That's the way this whole thing seemed like. It was like, and then this happened, then this happened. Now I get it. Um, in the first one, had to talk about their dealing with the volume and all this new technology. I get that, but I don't know. Dave, what did you think about this?
I liked it. I like the show, and I'm kind of with you. I like the behind the scenes film making aspect of these sorts of documentaries in general. I even like movies about making movies um, that are fictional. Um, so this is in my wheelhouse, and I liked it. I think that what it did for me, it was good. I like the way that they released this. They released this several weeks after the series is already completed, um, several months in this case. And so for me, it was very much like, oh, I'm revisiting this thing that I enjoyed at the time. And oh, it was really nice to go back to it. And actually, a lot of my thoughts on the show were sort of jumbled up. Like originally, I had been very adamant that this was the third best season of The Mandalorian by a significant margin. Um, I think I'm still in that camp, but seeing some of this stuff and some of the thought processes that went into these decisions made me appreciate them a little bit more, maybe, than I did in real time.
Now, to your point, Aaron, and I think maybe this is where Disney may have to rethink this because when I went to click on it and I saw season one, if you remember, was split up along 8 episodes, smaller in length, but focused on, hey, one was on the story, one was on the puppetry, one was on the volume. So I think maybe if they had done that instead of, okay, and then we did episode two, and then we did episode three, maybe it would have flowed better. Like if they had thematically split it up and rather than give you an hour, give you, I don't know, 6 vignettes of 10 minutes where you focus on the story,
Well, that
the
I'm
practical
sorry.
effects, the
I'm pulling up. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm pulling up Disney Plus because the first season was not 6 episodes, 10 minutes each. They were quite sizable. There were six
But
different
it
episodes,
was
but
broken up into segments, though, like to
correct,
Fredo's
correct. But
point.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that they put in a lot more time in the first two, versions of this. Um,
I
mm,
guess the question, though, that he poses is, would that have helped if it had been put together structurally different?
well, no, I agree. I agree with that. But what I feel like is that let's see. So this one
20
for
to 40
season three
minutes,
was
20 to 40 minutes.
this first season or this season three was right at an hour. Um, yeah, in season one you have an average of about 30 minutes each, and you had 8 episodes. So you got a lot of stuff. So it's like watching Empire Dreams or watching, you know, a 30-minute special on, Reels. That's my thing. Is like if it, I guess it just I don't know. I just felt kind of a little slighted. I guess in season two they had 2 episodes, and it was an hour and 8 minutes for the first one and 41 for the second, and then for season three you get just an hour. Now maybe there's more coming. I don't know. We haven't heard, but it seems like they were done talking with that one. So um,
Right, because the other thing was season two, they gave us the normal, well, they gave us what they gave us this time, but then they gave us another 40-minute episode focusing just on the finale, on the technology to bring Luke Skywalker to the Mandalorian.
so I don't know, man. I mean, just it's like I always, whenever I bought a DVD, I was always excited for the extra features and stuff like that, and it's like sometimes you hit gold with behind the scenes stuff, and then it's just like then you get one where we have to do behind the scenes stuff, so here's your gag reel or whatever. um so I think they could have done more. I don't think they wanted to. So
And sometimes the difficulty there is how much more you generate when you're talking about all this stuff because there's a cost to it, there's timing and an effort. So how much interest does Disney have to look? We put something else to be fun and let that be that.
I think too the what I appreciate about the shorter format here is that I got a little bit more of um, an idea of the scope of the season. Um, Instead of just we're going to look at this technical aspect for 30 minutes, we're going to blow through everything super fast. But acted as a refresher for me, and I was able to kind of see the bigger picture a little bit better. Um, and I think that that was helpful, at least for me personally. And yeah, we're still kind of on the fence about how well planned out all of this was story wise. Um, but I do think like there were at least certain acknowledgments that I appreciated, such as we're going to Mandalore. We know we have to go to Mandalore. We're going to tell this story about Mandalore, and I at least appreciated hearing that.
Hmm.
Like, okay, it wasn't just an accident.
And I'm
Um,
not saying that the stuff that they gave was bad. It's just I mean, it's like somebody forgot to ask Dave Filoni the follow up question. You know what I mean? It was like I agree with you. It was like that was a great statement from him and all these things. But it was just like, you know, push the thing to 2 hours and go a little bit more in depth on these stories. There's, because not everybody watched the Clone Wars, and so they might not know everything about Bo-Katan, and I don't know. It just, like I said, it was just it felt very easy. It felt very just surface level stuff. So and like I said, especially it digs at me because I'm like I said, I'm a documentary, behind the scenes. Just I will watch those before I'll watch the movie on the DVD, just because I've seen the movie before. Now I want to see what went into making it, and it's like, I just felt like, okay. And especially, like I said, the one episode on Coruscant, it was kind of cool that Doug Chang was like, we actually got to, we designed all this stuff in the prequels, but we never got to show it. It's like, oh, tell me more about that. And then they just moved on to something. That was the episode that had everybody scratching their head of like, why did we have this episode? And I think they spent the least amount of time on it. So, like I said, that's it's fine. It was just a letdown for me. So,
Yes, just for me, it's it was all right. Like it was a good hour well spent. Just uh, it's interesting getting behind the scenes and kind of just the thinking that the creators are having. But you're right in terms of any more. Yeah, this felt less like they're trying to hold some cards close to them, which yeah, they know that their sword's got to go somewhere.
now, kind of related to this, there has been an article, isn't really, I mean, it's kind of news, but um, there's been an article past or several articles based on this one quote from Dave Filoni recently, where he said the Mandalorian Mando Din Djarin was never meant to be um,
The only
the guy. So this whole podcast is about expectations, and so when you see the Mandalorian, you think, okay, this is the guy that's going to be, what I guess he said, what, the Aragorn. Um, it's like, nope, he's not. And that's interesting that Dave Filoni came out and said that. And if he would have said that earlier, would that have diminished people's interest in the show? I wonder. And how is that going to affect people's, I guess, relationship with Din Djarin going forward? If he's not going to be the top guy, you know, You know what I mean? It's just kind of interesting that Dave Filoni came out and said this, and I wonder how that's going to affect people's viewing of the show.
Another fun nugget to come out of this was that it was Baby Yoda was John's idea. And I think I knew that, but they actually elaborated on that.
And Filoni almost dropped an F bomb too. He's like, "Okay,
Uh,
if we're gonna do this, we can't mess it up." I mean, he paused. It was just like he
yeah,
almost so.
because he knew that Yoda, I guess, was one of George's favorite characters, and he didn't want to like mess with that. And John's like, "No, we're doing this," which was the right call.
Yeah, and okay, so now another article that passed my feed the other day said Kathleen Kennedy says that it's time for Star Wars to move past George Lucas. That's an interesting point as well. Maybe Jon Favreau is saying that. It's like, okay, thank you, George. Now enjoy your billions in retirement, and we're going to take it from here. Um, and I think it has to. It has to. You can be respectful to the origins and you can be consistent with the origins, but you know, you can't do exactly what George Lucas would have done, you know, for all eternity.
And we see it with other famous big properties. There was a point where the people who made the James Bond movies moved beyond Ian Fleming. There was a point where Star Trek had to move beyond Gene Roddenberry. And the advantage here is George Lucas is still alive, so you can touch upon him and go to the Grand Poobah and say, "Hey, does this fly?" But in an instance, it's better if you don't. It's better if you start going, "This is the story we want to go with," or the various movies that we have coming out, branching out in different ways. That may be in the long run the better way to go about it because you can say this is Star Wars and this is Star Wars and this is Star Wars, and it's not just there's one. It's not a monolith.
So anyway, all right. Well, that was the Mandalorian gallery. Um, let's now get into Marvel Land. And just a very like we've got 2 episodes in. I guess the third one's coming out tomorrow. Secret Invasion. Just very quickly, how are you enjoying it? 2 episodes in.
I like it. Um, I think we briefly touched on this before, but I think it's got a lot of that old man Logan thing going on there. It's got this idea of aging out of your prime and then having to figure out a way to get it back because you're in a life or death scenario. I think they mine an appropriate amount of tension from that. It's really Samuel L. Jackson's at the top of his game here. Pretty much all the performers in this have been enjoyable. Again, like Aaron, you mentioned this, I think last week when it was like when the actors are at a certain level, it feels almost film-like rather than like a television show, and that's what we're getting. There's a level of professionalism and talent on display that keeps you coming back. You really
and it helps
enjoy
elevate
watching
everybody
them.
else's performance as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, like there's some lighter weights that are a part of the ensemble that again they get elevated. The material itself gets elevated because like there's not so far. Again, we're early, but not a lot has gone on. I mean, you have the global earth-shaking consequences of one act, but beyond that, there's not been a lot of action or cause for like needing special effects, etc. It's mostly been the more of the spy game rather than the war games. So it's been good. It's been entertaining. I've enjoyed it. I'm interested in seeing more.
Yeah, just off the top, I wanted to make name check Cal Bradstreet, who's the creator slash showrunner. If you never saw his claim to fame, his created a show called Mr. Robot, which was famous for dealing with technology, dealing with uh, conspiracy theories, dealing with secret agencies, and you know a lot of backstabbing, a lot of stuff that makes sense that you would hire him to do this show, which is what I'm liking because the first vibe that I got, which I think they've even referenced it in the interviews, is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I mean the one with what's his name from the 70s. That one. And it's because it's very much that element of you don't know if you can trust the person standing next to you to not be a scroll. And even when you know if it's a scroll, is it a scroll that's a good scroll? Is it a scroll that's a scroll trying to take over the planet? Uh, I like the fact that at the start they're focusing on Nick Fury, on the problems that got caused by the blip. One of the more interesting aspects that I'm loving about Marvel right now is that particularly in the TV side of things, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, uh, the Secret Invasion, the Spider-Man movies, particularly after the second and third, they were focusing on the post-blip world. They're not just saying they're recognizing that this was such a heavy event that it can't just simply say, "Oh, this was last week's thing, and we're moving on." Because they've allowed some of their storylines to move right forward, but they're still they're showing the impact that it's had on the normal people who live in the Marvel universe. And the fact of the matter is Nick Fury's actions for 5 years totally derailed his plans for the Skrulls, and now they've decided, some of them have decided anyway, that they're going to take over the Earth, and that creates its own set of conflict because it's not just, well, an evil alien race is going to take over the planet, which we've seen that story. It's some members are there, but like even the final reveal of Nick Fury's better half at the end of the second episode was like, whoa, wait a minute, how long have you been? Has this been kind of hidden from us? So it's intriguing.
That
It creates a
okay, so
dynamic.
that brings me to my point. First of all,
Mhm.
loving it. First two episodes were really into it. What I like is that there's no way that you can even try to get, you know, 5 minutes ahead of the show because any person could be a shapeshifter, could be a scroll. So that's my point. Okay, so you said Nick Fury's got a wife, you know, and that's what I was saying up front. It was like, okay, if Star Wars was to introduce time travel and hold on to the shapeshifters like they tried to, introduce in Attack of the Clones, then you could retcon anything you want. And this is not a criticism of the MCU, but it just, it adds nuance if you want to. It's like I've seen people saying, maybe Rhodey is a scroll. And it's like, so then does that just inherently then add, change a line, from a previous movie, gives it a little bit more nuance, a little bit different meaning. Um, you know, was was that actually Nick Fury in, you know, name a movie, or was it Talos who was, posing as Nick Fury? I mean, there's so many things now they could just decide, and I think that is really really interesting when you. And again, Ahsoka could do that by if they dive into the world between worlds, which sounds like they're going to, then you can start fixing little things. And is that, I mean, I know this is all based out of the comic books. Secret Invasion is from the comic book, and but could that be in, you know, people's brains that we have these tools that we can now tweak or fix or change?
Well, yes.
And do you think they're doing it intentionally, or do you, I don't know.
Well, I mean, you got to be careful with that because, like, on some level, you're like, yes, they absolutely have the ability to do that, but if you do it too often, people begin to feel betrayed. Like, why have I invested in 30 movies or whatever when you're going to tell me that it was bull?
Well, but
Um,
with MCU, it's interesting because they've got everybody buying into it when we're talking about multiverse and we're talking about time travel, and nobody's really complaining about either one of those. And so you can just say, and now we've got scrolls, so now you can just, you know what I mean? It's kind of interesting. They've hooked the audience, so you're not going to get the audience blowback. Star Wars would be a different deal. You need to. That's where I think they need to tread lightly if they're going to do it, because otherwise it will seem totally goofy. But yeah, keep going.
well, I mean, I'm down for whatever. Because I don't like the multiverse stuff and I don't like the direction that they're taking right now. Um, in a global sense, I'm less invested or interested in the MCU at large. Um, so yeah, hit the reset button for all I care. Go go ahead and tell me the last 3 years have been like subterfuge and tainted in some way. I'd be down for that. It's like, okay, all right, now we hit the reset button and I'll be back in. Cool. um I'm not sure everyone else feels the same way. But again, you do have to limit yourself. You got to be careful about how you do these things because again, if you undo something, are you going to undo the undo eventually? Like you start playing this game and people have a hard time keeping up eventually.
Now, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. So if you don't want to know something, I'm gonna talk about somebody who dies. So turn off now, and we'll see you next week. All right, there's enough time there. Did you see Maria Hill's death coming?
Yes.
You did.
Well, I figured there had to be a key member of Fury's team dying. And I thought, well, we've seen Ben Mendelsohn, Halos, on all doing all these interviews and being awesome. And I didn't think it was going to be somebody like Rhodey or mm, Gaia or somebody like that. So I thought it was either going to be Everett Ross, who at the pilot episode shows, hey, that may have been a scroll. And then I thought, no, it's got to be somebody who, the only person you could hurt that would hurt Nick Fury would be Maria Hill.
And that is the other thing is that, and Dave, to your point, are you going to undo the undo, or so now you put it out there that whoever we saw in the first episode, I mean Everett Ross, Scroll,
Right.
was that character always? Are we to interpret that that character was always a Scroll from the first time that we saw him in whatever it was, Falcon Winter Soldier, not Falcon Winter Soldier, but
Civil War.
Civil War, you know, so every movie that he's been in is a scroll, or and so they have the obligation to, if you're going to do that, you have to then explain it to us and make it kind of, or clear cut, I suppose. um,
Or more clear cut anyway,
yeah.
because like again, there's like two large um possibilities of that when you see that like that's a perfect example. Ross is a scroll. Okay, was he replaced in that moment, in that time, in that place for the specific reason of trying to gain that person's trust and gain information? Was it a subterfuge play, or was it a long play wherein this guy was pretending to be like Ross, like you said, for years and years and years and years, and there was no such thing as a Ross? Um, yeah, you need to be able to find that out at some point because it paints the Black Panther pictures in a completely different light. Um, and because he was such a key figure in those, and so now like, wait, what are we? It was an alien the whole time, and what was his angle in all of this, and what are we doing here?
I
But
feel like we're coming up on like the kind of the scene from the first Mission Impossible movie where
oh yeah,
you go.
the masks
Well,
off.
no, not the map, but I'm saying it's like, they went through the whole party and then he's, finding out exactly what happened. You're getting flashbacks to the party and you're realizing that this person, it was the person we saw in the alleyway, and this person, it's, there's going to be that coming up where it's like, showing us the things that we quote unquote missed. I don't know.
Oh, so just right quick, and not to belabor the point, but to kind of push back a little bit. My one concern is you can pull that trick once. It's a trick card. You can pull the, oh, so and so you thought was a real person or a character you knew. No, it's a scroll all along. It's much the same way as the Flashpoint, or what you saw in the DC movie, The Flash, the idea of going back in time and rewriting history and whatever. Comic books are famous for having done it a number of times. It's like you can pull that trick once, any more than that, and the audience loses its connection to the characters because you can always rewrite that character death was not a real the character you love. It was a scroll.
But
Or you could write
here,
that villain was a scroll. And again, you could do it
I
once or you
agree,
could do it in small doses. You can't pull that trick too often or the
totally
audience
under
checks out.
totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with you about 98%. But don't they haven't they given themselves the opportunity to play that card more when they've said there are a million scrolls, so it's not like there's five. So you can play that card once, but if a million, there was a million, and then they apparently they live longer, much longer than humans, so there could potentially be more of them because they've been on the planet for a while, so they got things to do, so maybe they're making other scrolls. But you know what I mean? It's like they can play this card now. Maybe this series is that playing of one card, but it just has a bunch of different players. I don't know.
Since the scrolls have been here since the early '90s, I can't wait for them to be revealed that the Spice Girls were all scrolls.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
In Sync, Backstreet Boys, yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
All
which
the boy bands of the '90s, they were all scrolls.
it's the one thing that it's like I said, I'm enjoying the series so far, but it seems like it could get very confusing very quick. And you know, yeah. So, but they pulled it off with WandaVision, where that was kind of like, what the heck you doing? It's like it's funny. It's like you would think that I would have more faith in some of these writers, but I think they're this is just one of those things where, like I said, it could become a huge mess.
Now, no, not to be negative about it, but what do you think about the main villain that we're supposed to be working against, Gravik? So far, I mean, like the characters with personality, like Olivia Colman's character, I'm loving her. Her torture scene was half horrifying, half hilarious.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
was great.
yes, and the fact that she's as smart and as capable as Nick Fury, and she's the only one getting out alive. But I'm finding that maybe again, it's kind of like we were talking about. Uh, that the main bad guy, the guy, the young Skrull kid that heard Nick Fury make that promise, and now it's like, well, you didn't keep your promise. Now I'm going to take over your world. I don't know. Maybe I'm not connecting with him yet,
Seems a
just
little
yet.
weak sauce for
Yeah,
and it, yeah.
like okay, he's holding a lot of anger. He saw his parents get killed by the Kree, pilot of Starship to Earth, and he's been promised stuff and it hasn't happened. So dang it, now I will destroy this. It's like I don't know. I mean, they've done, the second episodes show that they've done a good job of taking over the global leadership council.
Well, if I understand them correctly, actually, I think it's Screen Crush. They're talking. Their hypothesis is that actually it's Talos is the big baddie, and that this guy, that the scroll kid, who's mad at Nick Fury, is just kind of the pawn, just kind of the figurehead type of a thing. But it's Talos that's pulling all the strings and calling all the shots, which that then throws, yeah, it throws your whole world upside down. Um, so yeah,
I think it's fair to assume that the like you said, the world being thrown upside down. I think like we're gonna have that happen
yeah,
probably a couple more times over the course of the show because again, they have the freedom to do that. Why would you not do that when this is the kind of story that you're telling to begin with? Um, I expect them to do that where at least a couple of times during the course of the show where I'm like, whoa, they did that, you know. But that particular theory, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I get
And I mean, put it this way: this is the kind of show, given again the creator, the themes, the story that we're getting, you can almost bet that there will be at least one, if not multiple, double crossings. Like you can probably have a double crossing every episode if you really want to lean into it. I just think that it's going to be interesting to see because at some point you got to give the audience kind of like a north star to follow, otherwise they can get lost. You almost end up in a Da Vinci Code kind of situation where you trust nobody, and then it stops me making any sense whatsoever because there's no way to follow who's true and who's false. So,
I just
but
love.
I still,
I was just gonna say, I just like that in the Mandalorian we got Chubbs, and in this one we've got Shooter McGavin. So
yeah, there you go. The Freda, to your point, I don't think we have a clear direction of what that will be, though. What the North Star is. I mean, like you can kind of trust Nick Fury, maybe. Um,
and you,
maybe. Um, beyond that, there's not even an objective, really. Um, if you take out the leader of this group of terrorists, are you good? I mean, I
yeah,
again, like he may be a pawn, according to that theory that was presented. So, like, I don't even think that we have a clear direction of what we should be rooting for, or
right.
who we should be rooting for, yet. Um, so they're going to need to establish that at
even
some point.
you even thought that Amelia Clark's character was going to, go back to being good really here quick, and then it was like, nope, nope,
Well, that
yeah,
might be it. I mean,
and
right
she might
now,
still,
two
but
two episodes in, like reconciliation between father and daughter. I mean, I think like that might be my biggest personal rooting interest right now. Other than Nick Fury don't die, because I like him, but
I,
that's
I
where I'm at.
I will say that the premise of, and again, this is not my original thought. I agree with it. I think it came from either New Rock Stars or Screen Crush. They said, find it a little hard to believe that of all the planets in, out there, that they could not find one that worked for the Skrulls. And so, all right, we're just going to go back to, Earth and just take it over. It's like, or maybe Captain Marvel and, Carol Danvers and Nick Fury just, stopped looking. And maybe it's going to come into some of the end game stuff, where it's like, first of all, you had the blip, and then you had, Captain Marvel. I
5 years.
gotta deal with all these other things that are going on because everybody lost their population, and Nick Fury was having an emotional breakdown, and so the Skrulls are like, well, you guys ditched us. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, and so yeah.
But just to follow up on Dave's point, because it's interesting that they're giving Nick Fury the "I'm too old for this" lead uh, mindset in this story. They're leaning into his age, they're leaning into his mortality. That whole conversation between him and Rhodey was all about, dude, you've been away and you've dealt with a lot, and this might be beyond you. So I hate to say it, but could they be setting up for a point where, in order to succeed, Nick Fury has to die? Now, we saw Nick Fury at the trailer for the Marvels.
Yeah.
Is that him? Is that Talos? So it creates an interesting dynamic where you could technically speaking kill quote unquote or Nick Fury, but he's still in the MCU.
And the thing we haven't talked about yet, though, is that their ultimate, that they've got an evil doctor who is trying to create a super scroll, and they're using like we saw on the display, Groot, and who I mean, they're trying to. So it stands to reason that there was a scroll kind of amongst the Avengers, if they have some of this, if I'm reading it right, DNA from, these superheroes. So
Because that's one of the interesting aspects. The Super Scroll for non-comic aficionados was a version of the scroll that had all the powers of the Fantastic Four. Now, the Fantastic Four don't exist in the MCU yet, so it makes it interesting to wonder whose powers they're going to be borrowing for this version of the Super Scroll.
That is a fun question, and maybe we'll get a fun answer.
Yeah. Can you imagine they got Thor and Groot and Captain Marvel?
Well,
These are characters that have been hanging around.
when they show the little monitor with Groot showing up on the monitor, like there were, I can't even remember who all showed up. Groot was on the monitor. I don't know. Somebody's probably screen grabbed all that. That was the one that jumped out at me though, because I was like,
yeah, I saw Groot right away. Yeah.
huh? But anyway,
Looks like
That's
Fredo's
where-
doing some quick
that's where
digging.
we're headed.
But anyway, well, yeah. So no, 2 episodes in. I mean, I'm interested. Again, I think Marvel is doing a wonderful job with their Disney Plus series. I mean, this one is, I knew nothing really going in, and they've got me hooked. And you really don't need all of the, if this is your first thing that you're coming to see, you really don't, all the backstory and intrigue and everything is interesting. But if you've got the premise that you have these shapeshifters that, are need a place to live, I think you can enjoy this show. So
Just real quick, I did Google who the characters were that were on that screen grab. So yeah, first one was Groot. Second one was the Frost Beast from Thor: The Dark World. Remember the monster that ended in the post-credit scene that's left stranded on Earth? Third one is Cull Obsidian, who was the big guy, the big heavy out of the Children of Thanos, the guy who lost his arm when Wong closed the portal. And then the last one is Extremis, which were the fire-breathing Iron Man 3 villains.
That's right. Yeah.
So you could have a dynamic where the Super Scroll could stretch out like Groot, tough like the Cull Obsidian, and then shoot fire and ice like the other two. So an approximation of Fantastic Four powers without actually being the Fantastic Four.
There you go. Yeah.
So if you haven't heard yet, the fireworks have started in my neighborhood, and Karen is now yelling at the neighborhood. So this might be a good place for us to leave the conversation.
Jack.
So we'll be back next week with more. Probably we'll talk a little bit more Secret Invasion, but we got more Star Wars talk. But hopefully everybody has a wonderful holiday, and make sure that all of your digits and appendages, stay in one place and stay cool. So until then, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Everybody have a great week.
McClunky.